On today's episode, we are going to be talking about the difference in stunt doubling and when to stunt double versus disassociation. And these two things can be easily confused, and it's also confusing of thinking, wait, no, I thought I was supposed to be showing up authentically all the time. So we're going to be talking about when stunt doubling could be appropriate to protect you, and then also how to recognize disassociation and what to do instead. So welcome to the Connection Codes podcast. I am your host, Tira Wages, and joining me is marriage and family therapist, clinical sexologist, Dr. Glenn Hill, and his incredible wife, Phyllis. Together, they have founded the Connection Codes, which is the guide to human connection. And we're so glad you're here.
Hello, world.
Hi, friends. Well, today's topic, oh my goodness, I love how some of these topics come about. So this one came about through a session with a client where a lot of pain around family was being talked about. And oh my word, I feel like we can relate so much to this topic. And it's probably actually, Tira, I think you can too. We could even dive deeper into that, like how to navigate family.
Yeah.
So this couple that's clients of ours, we're just at this big family get together, and it's back in her hometown with staying at her parents' house, and all her siblings come in, or they're all living around there anyway. And on the drive there, she had a panic attack, had to pull over and ask her husband to drive. She did not know what was happening.
Wow.
She was trying to process, but was really stuck. Then through the days, it was like a 4-day thing. Like the way she described it is that, the way he described it is she was gone, like not available to him, which he kind of takes on a lot of, she's mad at me. She doesn't like me. It's all my fault kind of stuff. So we were breaking it all down. We talked about disassociation, and she said, I definitely go there. I go to the disassociation. So can you define that? Just if our listeners don't understand that word, how would you define disassociation?
Well, and especially in Connection Codes language and not pathologizing, everybody disassociates. Everybody's been, reading a book before, and their friend talks to them for 2 minutes and they don't hear a word of it. They're completely gone. They're out of the room. Their ears are there. The ears are, whatever ears do, vibrate? Do they vibrate? I don't know. You get the idea. But they've completely disassociated. They've associated with the story in the book, and so they're not associating. They've disassociated with the situation. So that's just real important when you say that, because this does not mean that you need to be in an institution, you need to be in a straitjacket. And again, that's one of my big issues with the DSM is we label people and say, well, you've got a problem. No, that's human. Every human on the planet does that. We do that from early childhood. We've all seen little kids do that where they're in a different world, you know, and our granddaughters will come in and they say, I'm a puppy today. I'm like, okay, you're a puppy. Well, they're disassociating from their real human self. And so there's nothing wrong with that. It's just whenever, we put it on a spectrum 0 to 100, and when you get close to 80, that probably means you're not able to function in life. You're disassociating so much to such a degree that you're not able to be present at all in that moment. All of us daydream. Well, that's disassociation. That's not wrong. It's not bad. But if we're not able to focus, and in this situation you described, and she said she literally blacked out as she was driving. That's the reason she pulled off the road real quickly, because she realized, I can't drive. I'm literally dissociated so much, I was gone. So I was completely dysfunctional.
Well, so defining the word disassociation, it's disconnecting from where you are.
Yeah.
So family get together, but part of what she was communicating was, I don't know what was happening. As in, he's trying to use the Connection Codes tools, babe, what's happening for you? And her answer is, I don't know. We have a Zoom call, And we slow it down and go back to the car. So what was happening for you before this panic attack, right? Because that is pretty accurate, that her body was having so dysregulated that it went into a panic attack where, you start feeling like you see spots, you feel like you're going to black out, your breathing changes. This is why she pulled over. And she talked about, when we slowed her down in that moment, she talked about fear. Then we talked about what her experience is around her family, very large family. And she said, well, I really, really want to be authentic. And, that sounds good, right? Well, then we slowed her down with that and kind of went back to the wheel of what happens for you in that setting. Well, really, it's a lot of pain. And she started talking about the pain. And so then I said, whose face do you see in that? So she mentioned one person and only one person. Thought that was interesting. Then I said, how is that just recent, or is that for as far back as you can remember, time-wise? And it was very much as long as she can remember. So it's an interesting family dynamic. It's not something new. It's been going on probably as far back as she can remember. So then what happens for her is that she goes into disassociation because there's so much pain. And yet she's trying to be authentic in a situation where she's not safe.
Yeah, and she's also, she conveyed a lot of shame and fear of shame. That her family, her parents in particular, are not going to recognize her value. And she, again, traced this all the way back to her childhood. She said, I never felt good enough. It's a large family. She's one of several siblings. And she said, I've never felt good enough. I've always felt judged. Now, I'm not blaming her parents. Have they contributed to this? I have no idea. Don't even care. But that's important that people get. We're not blaming the parents going, well, they're horrible parents. No, this happened for her. Our children experience things not based on our intention alone. And I missed plenty of stuff with my kids. I don't question that. But there were lots of times I was trying to do good and right, and I missed with them. So what it has developed for her over the years is she just disassociates, and she doesn't know how to be present with her family because there's so much fear of judgment. There's so much fear of the pain, so much fear of shame, and so much pain in general. So we started talking about that. Well, then we talked about the idea of stunt doubling, and she's a connection coder, and she said, wait, so for those who aren't familiar with that, because do we cover that in Foundations?
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so I know it's covered in detail in the book.
Yeah.
But, the whole idea of stunt doubling, Hollywood, an actor in a scene that's either too dangerous, too vulnerable, whatever, where they just don't want to do that scene. Tom Cruise set aside because he does all of his own stunts. But, the actor feels like, oh, that's too difficult for me to do. So they call in the stunt double. Well, there are settings in life where we each need to call in our stunt double. There are scenarios where, you got to fake it. I always say one of the big ones of that is when your wife's in labor and she yells at you to get her some more ice chips. I do not want the husband to go, babe, I feel hurt the way you just spoke to me. Shut up, dude. Get her some ice chips.
Yeah.
She's in the middle of the most harrowing experience she's ever had. I don't really care if you feel heard or not. That's a very rare exception. She's not going to be in labor the majority of her life, the majority of your relationship. So in that moment, he needs to stunt double. He needs to be inauthentic. He needs to not say to her what's happening. But that's intentional because he's going to be present with her in that moment for her sake because she can't leave. I remember telling Phyllis that with the birth of one of our babies, that I think it's the first one, I said, baby, if you just go down to the cafeteria for a little bit, just take a break, you'll be fine. She's like, thanks, buddy. I'm not saying that was good. I'm just saying that's what I said. Because I had done that. I'd left and gone away for 15 minutes, came back, and I felt totally different. Anyway, So there are stunt double moments where we need to call in our stunt double, not be the authentic self. We call people to authenticity as much as possible, but there are times where we need to intentionally. But again, we're doing that on purpose. We're not doing it because we're not processing what's happening with us. We're not aware of what's happening with us. It's not because we're flooded, drowning, strangled. It's because intentionally we're going, okay, I'm going into this situation. It's not a safe environment. I'm probably going to lose some identity. It's going to be difficult, but I don't really have an option here if I'm going to do it. Now, you may not, and that could be a job interview. I mean, there's so many scenarios where that's the case. But that you're doing on purpose. You are very aware of yourself. You're very tuned into yourself. You're not disassociating. I've said before on our podcast that I hate weddings. I process through a lot. I regulate a lot with Phyllis heading up to the wedding. Because I'm not allowed to sit the bride and groom down and talk to them about their relationship. The wedding is just to celebrate them. I'm not allowed to be authentic in that moment. That's not what that setting is for. So, but I'm stunt doubling on purpose to protect the bride and the groom and not mess up their very special day.
So going back to this specific scenario with family, and especially because she is disassociating. So it's kind of like disassociating versus stunt double. And that's kind of what we want to break down today in this podcast. Because for some of you, you may have a family unit where you can be safe and you can be authentic. So we're not saying across the board, hey, you need to be a stunt double here. It's more when you see how dysregulated you get to the point of disassociating. And long before connection codes, I remember going to Glenn's family of origin, and he would read the back of the Splenda packages. Like he would
Sweet and low.
Sweet and low. He would sit in a chair. And now I know he was disassociating. He was so dysregulated being around his family of origin. It was so confusing to me because I knew what an amazing person he is, and that I'm like, why is he not talking to his siblings? Why is he not engaging? Like, he's such a great conversationalist, right? But in that setting, he did not feel safe. He did not feel seen, definitely did not feel safe. So he dysregulated.
Yeah.
He
So
disassociated.
I just diminished. And so, and just for those who don't know, the back of the Sweet and Low package is not that interesting. It's not even that long. But literally, I would just stare at it for a long, probably,
Very long time.
20 minutes or more. Because I'm so overwhelmed by this setting. I'm so overwhelmed by the pain of it, the awkwardness, the uncomfortableness of it, the loss of identity in it. So I just can't stay here, but I have to stay here geographically.
Right.
I have to be in the room, but I can't stand being here. So I would just disassociate. And I can remember times where I didn't even hear sounds anymore. I just learned to transport myself because I didn't want to be there, but I had to be there. So, you can't do both. So my body was there geographically, but I was not there. I completely left the room.
Well, and for us, it often led to conflict.
Yeah.
Because I felt abandoned, super
But
abandoned.
that's only because you were abandoned. That's the only
True.
reason you felt.
I didn't just feel it. I was, because he was disassociating, and he would just sit there, and I would be like, you're staring at a, sugar packet. Like, this was way long before connection codes. I didn't understand how he was losing identity, how he was disassociating. So I was critical. I was like, get your act together. Like, come and help me in the kitchen or something, go check on the kids. So for some of you that are listening, and it may not just be family, I think for a lot of us, it's family.
And sex. We talk a
Oh,
lot about
absolutely.
disassociating during sex.
Yes.
And for me, kids, my kids, I think I may have shared it on the podcast not long ago. I had to take my sister to the airport after she gave my kids 71 grams of sugar.
You did share that.
Plus an icy. So I don't even know how many grams of sugar were in the icy. And my kids' brains broke. There was no reasoning with them. And one of their brains broke so bad, they wet their pants in the car on the way home. Like, they were not connected. And I remember driving and being like, I was aware of it. So I'm curious if you can choose to enter that space of disassociation, because I remember thinking, if I don't disassociate right now, I will drive this car off the road. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious if you can actually because stunt doubling, you said, is more of a choice. Like, you are aware I'm going to church and I'm pretending to be someone I'm totally different that I'm not. Versus disassociation, I think there could be two realms, and it may depend on how in tune you are with yourself. Does your body disassociate to keep you safe? Is that the purpose of disassociation?
Yes.
So
and again,
emphasize that.
Big campaign quest that we're on to change this culturally, because we hear all these words, dissociation, like, oh my gosh, that's so unhealthy. No, it's protecting you. If you haven't seen the movie Adrift, go watch the movie Adrift. Powerful movie based on a true story. I've watched interviews with the person, that the main character in the movie. So, and I may have just ruined it. It's slightly a spoiler, but it's just amazing that this woman completely disassociated with her reality because the reality was too overwhelming. This is what happened. And dissociation is a cousin, whatever, to schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is designed to protect us. There are situations that are so extreme, they're unbearable. Mm-hmm. And that's true for adults, it's true for children. And so the psyche steps in to go, okay, this is an unbearable situation. This is not possible for this person to survive. How do we help them survive? Oh, well, they just will learn to disassociate. Again, I'm not voting for it, but the situation is what it is. It's already there. And so the psyche is just trying to survive, trying to keep from completely, well, whether it's suicide or whatever. So, and with schizophrenia, and it's not very often that children develop schizophrenia, but a child will develop schizophrenia when they're abused so severely because the human organism cannot believe that they're not loved. There's no way that I'm not loved. And I've studied a lot of cases like this. So the little one develops the sense that, oh, mom and daddy don't like Susie. They like me, Sarah, but Susie's bad. And literally the psyche fractures so that the real human can survive and blame Susie. And that's a split personality, a fractured psyche to take care of the person. And of course, we look at it, we pathologize, and we're like, well, this person has schizophrenia. And then we judge them instead of going, oh, so what happens there for you? I think I'm missing part of it. And it's one of my favorite things to do is sit with people that deal with schizophrenia, because it's so fascinating to see the human organism takes care of itself. And the schizophrenia developed as a protection. It's not some weird, came out of, a meteorite out of the sky. It developed over time. There's a cause and effect. So anyway, I think probably, and I hadn't really contemplated that much, Tira, you always ask these difficult questions on air, but I think you probably could disassociate intentionally on purpose. And in that situation that you're describing, driving, you don't have a whole lot of options here. You're in the car. Yeah. You are. You're with the kids. You are. The sugar's in the system. You ain't getting it out. Yeah. So what are you going to do? Yeah. Maybe Tira should transport herself to a beach somewhere and sip a margarita.
Well, okay, I want to argue this because part of the point of this podcast is to talk about disassociation happening to you and deciding to stunt double. I think you were deciding to stunt double if you were aware. Now, you might not have been. It might have been a really close where what was happening in the car with the kids was so overwhelming that you might have just disassociated, right? Like your body was like, I'm going to scream at my kids all the way home, which I don't want to do. But I don't know that it was a conscious decision. Now, you might have chosen to stunt double and go, you know what? I don't want to be the mother that's yelling at them. This is not their choice. It was my sister's choice. So I'm going to stunt double and I'm going to just turn the music up and enjoy the ride home, regardless of what's happening in the car. That's kind of this idea of what we're trying to present today is and that's actually not a bad example. I was thinking of it with a lot of us. We go into certain situations like family can be really, really tough. And I know if we had known what we know now back then, I would have said, babe, you lose a lot of identity around your family.
Right.
So stunt doubling would be really good if you just went in and kept it super shallow and stunt doubled in the situation where you can just sit and you can listen to them all talking, but protect yourself by just being a stunt double, by being that person who's fairly shallow, which for Glenn is really, really hard to do. And I think that would have changed that season of life because it was painful. I've never interviewed his family to know, did they even notice, whatever, I don't know that they would have. But for us, it caused tension and it caused conflict.
Right.
Because I felt so abandoned.
Right.
But I was so critical of him. I was like, this is not who you are. Like, get your act together. Be friendly. Don't just sit there and tune out. And I was just critical because I didn't understand. He was disassociating not by choice.
Yeah.
It was happening to him because the situation was so, for him, dysregulating.
Right.
And I know that over the years, I've actually had to learn that in certain situations where it's just better for me. I want to be there in that group. I want to go visit or I want to go out with that group of friends. But it's really not a safe place for me to be really vulnerable. So I'm just going to stunt double. I'm just going to show up as my best self and I'm going to listen to them chatter. But I have to have energy for that. And there's times when I just don't. I have a particular group of friends that it's that kind of group of friends that it's like you were together forever ago. And so every once in a while you get together. And there's times when I just have to say to myself, to protect myself, I don't have the energy to stunt double. And so I just can't go to that function this time.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the point of preparing yourself for whatever is next. And in talking with this client specifically this week, it actually gave her so much hope because she doesn't want to cut off her family.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to say, I'm never coming again. But she also doesn't, and for sure her husband doesn't want her to disassociate and have panic attacks and all of that.
Right.
And so she actually got really excited about the idea of stunt doubling. Like, it was like we were giving her permission to protect herself. And she thought, and she said to us, she said, every time I walk in there, I think be as authentic as possible, no matter what the consequences are.
Yeah.
And she's put herself into that over and over and over, and she gets hurt and hurt and hurt.
Yeah, she gets so deeply wounded every time, which of course is what led to this driving where she completely dissociates to the point of disappearing, when she can't drive once you've disappeared. And because her body is anticipating, her psyche is anticipating that pain experience, that shame experience. So I'm curious, and again, it was so exciting, with this couple to see her excitement. She's like, oh, I could do that. I could stunt double and be kind to everybody and be kind to my partner. And that was he got really excited about that because these family gatherings are horrible for them. And, he ends up wounded in the whole process. It's just a mess. And they were just cute as could be. They were giggling about it. And they, just started joking and goofing off about the stunt double. So that scenario, I think, is just amazing. So I'm curious, because again, you're already in it. You don't have an option here. You can't make your kids walk home on the interstate. So you're stuck.
Considered it.
Yeah. So when did you find out about all the sugar intake?
Immediately.
Okay.
I didn't know the grams of sugar until I got home and pulled the box out of the trash. But they walked back in my house with the movie size bags of Sour Patch Kids.
Right.
Each one of them had the movie size box. Yeah. So I knew immediately.
Yeah. But to even announce to your kids to go, okay, kids, I'm overwhelmed, pain, a lot of sadness, feel some loneliness here because now I'm the adult in the scene. I'm going to stunt double this because I don't want to be mean to any of you. I don't want to do things I'll regret tomorrow. So I'm going to turn on some music. I'll be listening to that. I hope the four of you survive the ride home, and I'll see you when we get home.
Yeah.
And basically just existed in your own little world in that moment because you don't have an option. You're stuck here. What do you think would happen if you did that?
Yeah, no, I think that especially for one of the kids, I think they had disassociated from the world. Like they were not in their body anymore. They, I don't know where they were, but they were not there. So they couldn't hear anything that I was even saying. So I did try at the beginning to like try to process of like, hey guys, I'm having some fear. We have a long car ride ahead. Like, okay, I'm feeling some anger. You know?
How long was the car ride?
Well, it was about an hour and a half total.
What?
Because it was 5 o'clock traffic to Nashville Airport and home from Nashville Airport.
Yeah.
So it was the perfect storm.
Minutes.
Yeah. Well, just
Gracious.
5 o'clock traffic. And so it was about an hour and a half of being in the car with them.
Right.
And so I think it is curious to even help me see the difference between the disassociating and the stunt doubling, because I very much in that moment had to decide. I can't even process the emotion anymore, because the more I'm trying to process, I will drive my car off the side of the road because there is nothing that they can do to help me in this moment. I remember just thinking, I have to go numb. I need to completely numb myself. I don't want to feel sad. I can't feel guilt. I can't feel anything. If I don't numb right now, I'm going to get hurt, or someone else is going to get hurt.
Yeah.
And so it was a conscious decision to numb myself.
Right.
But that's what I had to feel.
Yeah.
Yes.
Glenn is an ideologue. So he always presents the ideal, right? But I think just like immediately when he suggested you tell your kids, I'm like, that's part of it. It's not even a safe enough situation to tell your kids what you're going to do to survive this situation. And to me, that is the moment. So often when you have to choose to be a stunt double, you don't tell the people that you're choosing to be a stunt double. You're doing that to protect yourself. We could probably talk about this for hours, if not days.
I have a lot of fear because this is a great topic.
I know. And I want to make sure, definitely before we run out of time, because we talked about disassociation and sex, and that is a podcast in and of itself. The topic today is disassociation versus stunt double, because if you're tying it to sex, we don't want you to then choose to be a stunt double in sex. That's not our goal in sex. So we're not talking about how many of us have had disassociation in sex. That's a podcast in and of itself. This one is specifically where you are getting so dysregulated. And often it can be with an individual. You may be in a job interview where you're going, wow, I am aware that I am not safe and I'm getting dysregulated. I need to choose to stunt double and protect myself by stunt doubling in this situation. I think sometimes it, like specifically today, talking about family. There are certain friends where you just decide, I don't need to be around those friends. I'm not even going to choose the option of stunt doubling. But with family, most of us go, we don't want to cut off our family. We still want to acknowledge their family. We're going to show up at Thanksgiving or Christmas or just once a year at a family reunion. But I'm not safe there. I don't feel safe there. It's not that someone's out to shoot you, that kind of safe. You just emotionally don't feel safe in your family of origin. You lose a lot of identity, and it helps so much just to acknowledge that. Glenn mentioned the whole idea of which some of you might not understand at all, but weddings are really hard for Glenn because he wants to go to level 5 with everyone at the wedding. And so ahead of time, I'm like, babe, you just need a stunt double. This is a time for us to enjoy the food and the dancing. And this is not a therapy session.
Don't forget the bride and groom. We're supposed to celebrate the bride and groom.
Sure. But,
That's what you always tell me.
But oftentimes the bride and groom don't even know that you're there. I think the last wedding we went to, we never even spoke to the bride and groom because they did pictures after the ceremony. And we had eaten everything there was to eat. And we were like, let's go. So we never even saw the bride and groom.
No. But for me, my whole focus in weddings is to get some time with the bride and groom so I can tell them they're headed towards disaster.
Right.
And they need help.
Yeah. That's what you feel on the inside.
Which is not the point of the wedding.
But that's also a little bit different, I think, of the whole topic today of disassociation versus stunt doubling. Because I don't know that you disassociate at weddings.
No,
I just tell you, you have to stunt double. You have to be shallow. Just focus on me and let's have fun. And basically, that's what you're here to do. Is because I like weddings, and especially if they have good dancing, I love it. But I think we're more honing in on when you're around situations where you find yourself dysregulating and disassociating, then the other option is to ahead of time go, you know what? I'm just going to stunt double.
Yeah.
I'm going to stunt double around my family. Yeah. I am going to make choices and it's really interesting just with this one client, how much joy it brought that client.
Yeah.
That idea that I can do this.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great point. And so I want because we need to do the core emotion wheel, and I think just one of us is going to be able to do it today. But I want people to really hear that difference. And our goal as a society is to show up authentically.
Right.
That is our goal. So we did have a podcast a few weeks back where we mentioned stunt doubling and how it is painful to know that we stunt double, that we go to church and people are stunt doubling. That is painful to know. But unfortunately, as individuals, we don't feel safe in every situation to be our authentic self. So therefore, in those moments, I do think it hurts society that we continue to have to stunt double, but we also need to protect ourselves and our own psyches so we don't get to the level of disassociating.
Right.
Because disassociating is such a pain experience for your brain. It is going against its natural, what it's created to do, and the long-term side effects of disassociation are disorders of the psyches on a much higher spectrum. And so that really is the purpose and the goal today, is to make sure that you can hear the difference of authenticity, stunt doubling to keep you safe, to avoid disassociation. So now we are going to do the 4-minute tool that Dr. Glenna Phyllis created to help us learn how to process those emotions before we go into those situations. So you're going to show up in a space, process what's happening for you, get that out of your body so you actually know how to show up in those spaces. And then it will also help you to be able to process in the moment. So when you're with your family, not stuck in the car with them where you can't escape necessarily, but somewhere that you can have a moment to yourself. You can say, oh, I'm feeling a lot of pain right now. You can actually know what's happening in your body. So you can reach that goal of authenticity.
Okay, I'm dying for you to do an issue-specific wheel about that car ride.
Oh, Lord Jesus. Okay. I first need to say I love my sister. So I have joy. My sister was in town. She took the kids to the movies. So much joy that she was with them. I felt anger that they each had their own icy and box of Sour Patch Kids. So much anger that was available to them. Shame that I didn't know, probably shame that I couldn't control my own self enough to where I didn't need to numb myself. That I couldn't be a stronger version of myself and handle all the screaming that was taking place in the car. Guilt. Probably guilt because I couldn't hide my pain with my sister, that I didn't stunt double very well with her. It took her a while to call me after. She goes, are you still upset with me? Are you still mad at me? So guilt over that. Fear. I had fear in the car. I had fear that I was just going to drive off the side of the road because things became super intense in there. Lonely. Whew, that was so incredibly lonely. Yeah, so lonely. Sad actually for my kids' experiences, because they don't want to show up like that. That is not who they are. And sad that one of them wets themselves and then can't stop. They're laughing so hard that they can't even control their bodies. Just sad for them what that turned into. And then hurt. Just hurt that things weren't taken into account of what I had to do next. The hour and a half car ride and being alone. Wes was out of town. All of those things hurt that it wasn't looked into the future for my experience. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that is what we teach people to do. How to actually...
Joy?
The joy was my sister took them to the movies.
Yes.
Yeah, because I had coaching calls that afternoon. So she got them out of the house, took them to the movies so I could go do my calls. Yeah. And so being able to process is what helps you stay connected to yourself. And that is our ultimate goal. Even if you're stunt doubling, that helps you you're still connected to you.
Exactly.
You made that choice because of the pain and the fear. Where disassociation, that's where you are now you're not connected anymore. And we want every person to show up as a connected person to themselves. And it is this tool that helps us learn how to do that, created by Dr. Glenn and Phyllis. So if you have not used this before, you don't have access to it currently, you can get it for free on our website, which is actually crazy. And I've said this before, we should be charging so much for people to download this. But you can actually download it and get access to a video of Dr. Glenn and Phyllis explaining it much deeper and how to use the tool, and myself as well. And try it for yourself. Try it with your partner and see what comes up for you in the areas that you find yourself. Do your own issue specific wheel on moments that you find yourself stunt doubling or disassociating. Think about when those moments take place in your life. And thank you for sharing these episodes, for leaving your 5-star reviews. They genuinely help us so much. So if you have not done that yet, please leave us a review. And we do all of this because
you need this.
You deserve this. So let's do this.
Let's do this.